Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. If you are here for the first time, consider subscribing for more videos. I want to start with an anecdote. When I was a first year in college, I binge watched a movie, obviously the stunning Soraya Am. The movie left me wondering and quite poignant for the night, and I kept pondering what really went wrong here. The fact that it is based on a true story is even more heinous. What do we take away from this movie? That we live in a world where people would go to an extent of barbaric acts for beliefs. Now, to give you a glimpse of the movie, it is not about a random barbaric scene in the movie, but it is about a woman who was falsely accused of committing adultery by her husband, who wanted to marry a 14-year-old girl. And when she refused to divorce him, he conspired against her, convinced the village guilty of adultery, and she was stoned to death. Right. Now, my emphasis over here is not about the belief in stoning to death for adultery, but what I want to emphasize over here is that it is possible to delude a large group of people if you can exploit a bad ideology accepted by the majority of people. Look at the case, look at the history, the genocide of European Jews. Adolf Hitler was radically, he was able to brainwash, indoctrinate the Nazi Germans on the ideology of anti-Semitism. The radical expansion of territory, he led the Nazi Germans to commit the most unthinkable Holocaust in the history of human civilization. He made the Nazi Germans to believe that the final solution to exterminate Jews would be to throw them uh, inside the gas chambers. This is nothing but the epitome of diabolical evil. No value for human life. He is a good example of how a bad person, an evil person, can exploit an ideology of the majority and use it for genocide or for greater evil things. Now, another similar case in Pakistan where a young university student, Mishal Khan, was lynched to death by an angry mob on the pretext of blasphemy. There was no evidence to substantiate his guilt, but he was accused. No investigation was done. People paid no attention to finding the truth, but he was lynched to death. We can say that he paid the price for having intellectual honesty that didn't align, or intellectual curiosity that didn't align with the Islamic way of reasoning. Now we see this sort of ideological exploitation in modern politics, where it is so easy to delude a group of people if you can ingratiate a belief system that appeals to the mindset of the majority, and you find people taking your side or on your side. What do we take away from leaders like Donald Trump and Narendra Modi? They have made it possible to tell the world that if you can promote policies, execute orders, and incorporate religious rhetoric, you can win any election. You can be in a position of power, you can control people and make look like you are the hero. By appealing people with an ideology that appeals to them. Now, if you compare that with Rahul Gandhi, if Rahul Gandhi becomes less secular and if he starts to incorporate religion into his political campaigns, it is very likely that he might win the next election, right? Use an ideology or a belief that appeals to the majority of Indians, then he is very likely to be in the position of becoming the next prime minister. We never know. So the problem with a belief system and ideology is that as long as it appeals to people, people really don't care much about logic and moral reasoning. Right? They're just happy that an ideology has been ingratiated, has been promoted, and it appeals to them, and they don't care much about finding or using more moral reasoning uh, outside the context of that framework. It is really bad to think that. Now, in the recent attack, the assassination of the supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei, we can say that it was a good initiative because the regime is an evil regime. For people who do not know, the regime has been massacring people for 47 years, curtailing basic human rights. right? Dictating how much skin women can reveal, and curtailing freedom, massacring people, shooting people when they were peacefully protesting down the street for basic human rights. So curtailing of freedom was so bad in Iran under the regime, under the supreme leader, that if you are a woman, you walk down the street without wearing a hijab, you might likely encounter an old man, right, who thinks that the regime is right, might start to harass you for not covering your face. And that's just a reality, right? That is how bad it is. Now, my point over here is that Donald Trump, he could have done a better job by providing a viable justification for the assassination, and he could have negotiated further for peace, no more war. He could have, he could have looked for a way to negotiate better, to represent peace in a better way. But all he does is that he would keep on saying stuff that mesmerize people in a way that I think a lot of Americans are also bewildered. He would say one thing today, and tomorrow, even Americans are not sure what he's going to say. He doesn't stick to his promises or words. He would make statements such as caricature statements, such as bomb the hell out of Iran, right? He could say stuff like that and get away with it. That- Who in an intense situation there when there is a war happening between two countries, two against one, and you can say stuff like that, bomb the hell out of Iran, and this is not, i- this is like a joke for him, like a playground for him. He is making it look like it is a battle between Iran uh, and America, right? He's not making it look like attacking the evil regime. He's making it look like he's on war with the Iranians, right? And he's just making it look bad. So we could say that he is really failing in representing what a true leader should look like. And he is also someone who thinks that he should be awarded with Nobel Prize for peace. While in his mind, he thinks that if they don't listen to what I have to say, we will keep bombing missiles. Right? No further negotiation for peace, irrespective of how bad and intense situation might look like. You can expect that the regime is not going to remain silent after the supreme leader has been assassinated. You can expect a reaction, but on the other hand, he should have negotiated further in a way that would only push two countries to look forward to peace. That's it. And it is also mind-boggling to see that he can say stuff like that, and the supporter of Donald Trump would be commenting on social media that he is the best president in the history of American politics. Right? It is just mind-boggling to see how people cannot see that it is so crystal clear that somewhere he is really not a good leader. He's something is wrong with his idiosyncratic temperament. The way he represents the United States is also quite shocking in a lot of ways. So my point is that we have to understand that it is possible that people are out there. We do not know if we are surrounded by sociopath leaders, using an ideology, promoting a belief system, that knowing that it is a system that appeals to the majority, and making it look like they are the hero, right? Making it look like they are on the path of truth. We have to understand that we are susceptible to being proven wrong. A belief system is reprehensible. A bad ideology is reprehensible. If we remain obsessed with that sort of thing, then we may never realize that there is a possibility that a belief cannot be axiom. Right? It could be proven wrong. And we shouldn't be scared of it. We shouldn't be sensitive to it. I mean, look at the history. When Galileo was working on heliocentrism, while he was working on the theory of the Earth orbits around the sun, the Catholic Church hounded Galileo for 2 decades because the Catholic Church was afraid that it might challenge scriptural authority. But now today, if I walk down the street and if I say that the Earth doesn't revolve around the sun, you might think that I am ginormously ignorant. But that theory was opposed by Catholic Church for all sort of reasons. And same goes with the idea of demonic possessions, where religious organizations, religious people, and especially Catholic churches used to think that demonic possession was a real thing because psychology didn't advance, medical science didn't advance. But with the advancement in psychology and medical science, we have come to realize that there is no such thing as demonic possession. One of the interesting cases which I have come across is of John Ferry. In 16th century, a Dominican nun, she recorded her own exorcism. And with the advancement in psychology, when her symptoms were diagnosed, she was the first patient to be officially diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. It used to be called or termed as multiple personality disorder. Uh, it is really an interesting case because people back then used to believe that she had divine insight and making different voices, which later diagnosed that she had multiple personalities. And she never recovered. They thought when she had different personalities, they thought it was a battle between good and evil. Um, it is really an interesting case to study. And that is also the case with a lot of uh, religious people back in the days when they did not realize that uh, epilepsy is a medical condition, hallucination, for instance, right? Schizophrenia. All those symptoms were considered or were thought that when people manifested those medical issues, mental issues, um, the religious people often diagnose or term that sort of manifestation as demonic possession. Thankfully, with the advancement in medical science, research in psychology has advanced so much that now, when was the last time we heard of stories like uh, an exorcism was done? We don't have a story like that, and people don't seem to rely much on that. I mean, look at the UK, America, and England. You see heated debates between science and religion. But that was not the sort of environment they had back in 16th or 17th centuries because church was not that open-minded, and obviously the Catholic churches were not a big fan of science. So it took a while for people to really come out and to have uh, an engaging or a heated debate between science and religion. Now we see that often on the internet, and we see forums like that. Now we have come to a place where people know how to negotiate and people are not afraid anymore. Even religious people are defending in the best possible ways, and also people who are more of a science, they are also making the best explanations and reasonable conversation on the table. So what I have been trying to say over here is that if we keep allowing people to play politics, to exploit our belief system, it would become impossible for us to consciously decide what is morally right and wrong for the greater good of humanity. We have to understand that we cannot believe or accept anything on face value. There should be some sort of moral justification. Uh, Look at Christians around the world. Why do you think they support Israel right away? Instinctively, they have religious obligation to support Israel, pray for Israel, because there is no moral justification to it. It is entirely based on the inspiration drawn from the Old Testament. Israel uh, is considered as a chosen nation. So in the Old Testament, Palestine is an enemy of Israel, and Israel as a victim, as a chosen by God. So that sort of biblical interpretations and biblical presentation of the nation Israel is what making people around the world, Christians around the world, instinctively just support Israel, pray for peace in Israel. So there is no political context, there is no historical context, and there is no, to a large extent, there is no moral justification why Christians are supporting Israel. You might have seen that, right? You walk down the street and there is always a heated debate, uh, vice versa, also with Muslims supporting Palestine. So we have to understand that we cannot accept anything as axiom without justification, especially moral justification, because it is possible to have universal moral truth to on many levels. Because if I walked on the street and if I say that killing someone is bad, then everybody can agree to that, right? But I'm not sure if I walk down the street and if I say that you are not supposed to uh, engage in physical intimacy before marriage. I'm not sure how many people would agree to that. That is also a moral framework, and that is also a moral principle, but that is not applicable to a lot of people, right? But there are certain moral principles that are applicable to, to people around the world, irrespective of where you come from. Moral principles like such as you should not steal, right? You should not bully people. You should not throw derogatory words at random people, right? You should not burn down uh, strangers' houses, right? With no justification or whatever you can term it. So there are certain moral principles that we can all agree to. And also we also have to understand that when we are so obsessed with a belief and ideology, especially by the majority, there will always come people who would come in the form of an angel as as a metaphor used in the Bible, like someone who can come with an appearance of a nice person and can convince the majority and can exploit people in general. And that is what exactly it is happening around the world. Yeah. Using an ideology in a way that makes it look like uh, um, make it look like a victory, like make it look like freedom, make it look like triumphant, make it look like the right thing to do. So realizing, understanding that we are all susceptible to criticism, susceptible to scrutiny, and absolutely susceptible to be proven wrong.